In the heart of East Texas, where cotton fields stretch beyond the horizon and everyone knows your name before you've even introduced yourself, a war veteran's world is about to shatter. Jimmy Crawford never imagined that witnessing one corrupt handshake behind his hardware store would ignite a battle that would test everything he believes about justice, family, and the place he's called home for 52 years. The September heat clings to Millbrook like a heavy blanket, and Jimmy Crawford wipes sweat from his brow as he locks up Crawford Hardware for the night. 8,000 souls call this Texas town home, and Jimmy knows most of them by name. His weathered hands, scarred from his time in the Gulf War and years of honest work, fumble slightly with the keys, a reminder of the shrapnel that ended his military career but never broke his spirit. As he rounds the corner to the back alley where his old Ford pickup waits, Jimmy freezes. Deputy Tom Brennan stands in the shadows, his uniform crisp despite the humidity, accepting a thick envelope from a man Jimmy recognizes, Carlos Mendez, whose arrest for drug dealing made headlines in the Millbrook Gazette just last month. The exchange is swift, practiced, and unmistakably corrupt. "This better be the last time we have this conversation, Carlos," Brennan's voice carries across the still evening air. "My father's already asking too many questions about your quick release." Jimmy's heart pounds against his ribs. Every instinct from his military training screams at him to move, to get away, but his boots feel rooted to the cracked asphalt. 28 years of living in this town, of trusting these streets, crumbles in the space of 30 seconds. The deputy's eyes scan the alley and lock onto Jimmy's. Time stops. Brennan's hand instinctively moves to his weapon, and Jimmy sees something cold and calculating flash across the younger man's face, a look that promises this moment will have consequences. 3 days later, Jimmy's world explodes. Federal agents storm Crawford Hardware at 7 in the morning, their black SUVs drawing a crowd of curious neighbors. They tear through his store, his home, his life, searching for evidence of illegal weapons sales to Mexican cartels. "Dad, what's happening?" Sarah Crawford's voice trembles through the phone as Jimmy sits in a holding cell, still wearing yesterday's clothes. At 28, she's built a reputation as one of Houston's sharpest federal prosecutors, but right now she sounds like the little girl who used to fall asleep in his lap while he read her bedtime stories. "They're saying I've been selling guns illegally, sweetheart. Someone planted evidence in my store, serial numbers, transaction records, everything." Jimmy's voice breaks as he speaks the words that feel impossible on his tongue. "Sarah, you know I would never." "I know, Dad, I know." Her voice hardens with the steel that's made her formidable in courtrooms across Texas. "I'm driving up tonight. Don't say another word to anyone until I get there." As Sarah makes the 3-hour drive from Houston to Millbrook, her mind races through the legal implications. Someone with serious resources and insider knowledge orchestrated this. In her rearview mirror, the lights of the city fade into darkness, and ahead lies the small town where she learned right from wrong, where her father taught her that sometimes standing up for what's right costs everything. The Millbrook courthouse hasn't seen this much excitement since the oil boom of the 1980s. Sarah sits across from Deputy Brennan in the cramped interrogation room, her briefcase open, legal documents spread like weapons across the scarred wooden table. "Deputy Brennan, let's discuss your whereabouts on September 15th. Sarah's voice cuts through the stale air with surgical precision. She's traded her usual courtroom attire for simple jeans and a blazer, but her presence fills the room like a gathering storm. Brennan leans back in his chair, his confidence unshaken. "I was on patrol, same as every night. Ask anyone in town. I'm the one keeping drugs off these streets while your father was apparently selling weapons to the very cartels bringing poison into our community." "Interesting." Sarah slides a photograph across the table, a grainy security camera image from the bank across from her father's store. "Because this image, timestamped at 9:47 p.m. on September 15th, shows you in the alley behind Crawford Hardware. Care to explain?" For the first time, uncertainty flickers across Brennan's face. His fingers drum against the table, and Sarah recognizes the tell. She's seen it in dozens of guilty defendants over the years. "Sometimes investigations require unconventional methods," he says finally. "Maybe I was conducting surveillance on your father. Maybe we'd been watching him for months." The room falls silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights overhead. Sarah closes her briefcase with a decisive snap. "Then you won't mind if I subpoena all surveillance records, phone logs, and financial transactions for the past year. Full federal investigation, Deputy. Everything transparent." Brennan's jaw tightens. "You're playing with fire, counselor. This town has ways of protecting itself." That night, Sarah sits on the porch of her childhood home, watching fireflies dance in the humid air. Jimmy emerges from the house, 2 glasses of sweet tea in his hands, and settles into the rocking chair that's been his evening ritual for decades. "I never wanted this life to touch you," he says quietly, his eyes focused on the empty street where he once taught her to ride a bicycle. "All those years in the war, I thought I'd left the fighting behind." Sarah reaches for his weathered hand. "Dad, you didn't bring this fight, but you raised me to finish it." Her voice carries the weight of every lesson he taught her about courage, about standing up for those who couldn't stand up for themselves. Your mother used to sit right here, Jimmy continues, his voice thick with memory. She'd say that sometimes the smallest towns hide the biggest secrets, but that just means good people have to shine a little brighter. The next morning, Sarah's investigation expands beyond Brennan. Bank records reveal suspicious transfers. Phone logs show connections between the deputy, Mayor Harrison, and 3 prominent local businessmen. What started as a frame job against one honest veteran becomes a web of corruption spanning years. As word spreads through Millbrook, the town begins to choose sides. Some rally around the Crawford family, fellow veterans, longtime customers, people who've known Jimmy's character for decades. Others, those whose livelihoods depend on the current power structure, whisper warnings about outsiders stirring up trouble. The town meeting takes place on a crisp October evening in the Millbrook Community Center. Nearly the entire population crowds into the space built for half their number. Sarah stands at the podium, her father beside her, facing a room full of neighbors who've known them their entire lives. "I know some of you think I'm here as an outsider," Sarah begins, her voice steady despite the weight of every eye in the room. "But this is my home too. This is where I learned what justice means, where my father taught me that protecting your community sometimes requires uncomfortable truths." She presents the evidence methodically, financial records, surveillance footage, testimonies from other veterans who'd been approached about illegal activities they refused to participate in. The silence in the room grows heavier with each revelation. Deputy Brennan sits in the back row, his uniform still pristine, his face unreadable. When Sarah finishes, Mayor Harrison stands, his voice shaking with barely controlled anger. "These are serious accusations, Miss Crawford. I hope you have more than circumstantial evidence before you destroy the reputations of good men who've served this community." An elderly man in the front row stands slowly. Frank Morrison, 83 years old, Korean War veteran, owner of Morrison's Diner for 40 years. "Tom," he says, addressing the deputy directly, "my grandson Mark was one of the boys you arrested last spring. Caught him with drugs behind the school. But funny thing, Mark swore someone gave him those drugs, told him to hold them for a few minutes. Boy never touched drugs in his life before or since." One by one, other voices join Frank's. Stories of convenient arrests, of evidence that appeared and disappeared, of a pattern that becomes undeniable when viewed together. The truth doesn't explode like a bomb, it settles over the room like morning fog, gradual but inescapable. By midnight, Deputy Tom Brennan has resigned. Mayor Harrison announces his decision not to seek re-election. 3 businessmen face federal charges, and Jimmy Crawford, cleared of all accusations, sits on his porch once again, watching his daughter pack for her return to Houston. "You could stay," he offers, though they both know it's not really a question. The town's going to need rebuilding. Good people in charge. Sarah kisses his forehead, breathing in the familiar scent of honest work and Old Spice aftershave. "This will always be home, Dad. But Houston needs someone fighting the good fight there too." As her taillights disappear into the Texas night, Jimmy rocks slowly in his chair. Tomorrow he'll reopen Crawford Hardware. Tomorrow he'll serve neighbors who may not meet his eyes for a while, who may need time to process shame and gratitude in equal measure. But tonight, for the first time in weeks, the air tastes clean. The fireflies dance their ancient patterns, and in the distance, a train whistle echoes across the cotton fields, carrying promises toward morning. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, subscribe for more tales of everyday heroes who refuse to stay silent when justice is on the line. Because sometimes the most powerful battles aren't fought on distant battlefields, they're fought in the places we call home.